season 2 bathtub. Ohio bathtub season 2. Best friends, no clothing. Confusing bathtub season. It's bathtub season. It's bathtub season. It's bathtub season. It's bathtub season. Well, good evening, Austin.
What's up?
We are both very unprepared for recording, but it's also been a metric year since we did.
Unbelievably unprepared. All of my shit was scattered about. I had to find it. I didn't fall asleep this time, but I did get caught up watching TV, and it took me a little bit to get to the bath. We're here. Thank God we're here. You don't know what we've been through.
I was kidnapped, okay? It was a living hell. I was beaten and tortured and treated like a friggin' farm animal.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm like a changed man since the last time I recorded.
I'm glad someone changed you.
I went overseas. I was in Iceland for a week, which was amazing. So now I have some Viking gut bacteria swimming around inside me and some salty air somewhere in my follicles. I also had a coolant line bust in my car, so I'm now also a grease monkey because I fixed it myself and it works. And I'm proud to say I am 6 months sober from alcohol. So a lot going on in Corey's life right now.
Lots of good things. Well, not so much the coolant breaking, but fixing it.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself. I've done some repairs on my car before. That's the first major thing I've done was replacing the main coolant line on a car. So it was cool. And Iceland was obviously amazing. I posted it on our socials, but when we're big and famous, we'll have to go and record an episode from one of the lagoons over there.
That sounds cumbersome.
But amazing, right?
Yeah.
So that's all that matters. I mean, I know that would probably not go well with your well put together yacht outlook on life, but my duct tape pirate ship loves the idea.
Maybe we can strap a couple mics to a drone and just hover it over us.
Well, technically almost all of Iceland illegally cannot fly a drone, but many people do. But I'm sure we could figure something out. Maybe just some cheap Bluetooth mics with our phones. I love how we've gone on to talking about this like it's actually going to happen and try to figure out the logistics.
It's what we do.
It is what we do. So, this is kind of a special episode.
Not to be confused with one of our specials, which it kind of is, but kind of isn't.
Yeah. I would say this is a special.
This is a non-season episode, but this particular one is going back to our first season, The Tick.
Yes, but there's a good reason why we're making this episode, and we kind of hinted at it during our Robio, but if you all remember, I was a guest on a podcast called Pedals of Support a while back, which was very cool. And I've kept in contact with Mama D, who runs that show. And we were invited to join their podcast network. So we are going to be joining a network.
Yes, we are.
UNFILTERED Studios is the name of the network. Their website is UNFpod.com. So U, N as in Nancy, F as in Frank, pod.com. Some of the shows on that network are Pedals of Support, like I said, Finding Your Way, The Stupid History Minute, and That Florida Feeling, which are all fairly good-sized podcasts. We're very excited. I think this will be a great thing for our show and help us grow and build a community, which I think both of us have always wanted out of this.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to join and grow with the network.
The brass tacks of it all, nothing's going to change about our show, though we have talked about, we are going to be doing some guest episodes. We will probably have guests on from some of the other shows on the network, and vice versa will be on their shows. And there'll be a new stinger at the end of the podcast saying that this was part of a network. So you'll hear that at the end of this episode, which will be very cool. But otherwise, everything will stay the same about our show. It's just a chance to grow alongside other podcasts, kind of a rising tide, raising all ships situation.
Well, that was our big news. See y'all later.
Yeah, time to drain the tubs. Bye. No.
As all our listeners sit there and go, but how does this have anything to do with season 1? He said this is a callback to season 1.
You can go over that. I talked a lot there. So what are we doing tonight, Austin?
Well, as we discussed in previous episodes, we are going to make good on our word and go over some of the commentary from The Tick, which, as you, I'm sure, remember, was our season 1. We finally went back, and I don't know about you, Corey. I think I watched all the commentary tracks before choosing which ones to use.
No, I only watched the ones you told me to, because I had a feeling we would be doing more in the future.
We'll see. I'm definitely interested in maybe revisiting this, but for this particular episode, we went over 2 episodes worth of commentary, and I think we can squeeze it all in. I think
we can.
We went through the pilot, which is the only one that has commentary from Barry Sonnenfeld, the producer-director of the pilot. And the other episodes are all from Ben Edlund, who is the creator of The Tick, the comic, the show, all of it.
And the cartoon.
Yeah, the cartoon as well. The character as a whole is his pride and joy. But I picked these 2 episodes because it was, 1, it was the only one with Barry. 2, it was the first one that Ben did for the DVD series. Arthur Interrupted was. So they kind of felt like the broadest strokes. They encompassed a little bit more than just the episode itself, whereas the future ones with Ben, if we do go to those are going to be more specific behind the scenes of the episode in question.
I did want to say, though, that since, entire episodes of this show, The Tick, are up on YouTube, and apparently they just don't care, I was going to attempt to upload the entirety of these commentary episodes to the Bathtub Season YouTube before this episode of the podcast comes out so people can watch if they want. I'm hoping those don't get flagged or taken down. And if they do, I get it. But if they're letting the whole episodes be up there, I don't see why this would be a problem.
It's true.
So not only do we have a big announcement, and we're doing a fun special, and our specials traditionally have been some of my favorite episodes. Are you imbibing or enjoying anything special on tonight's episode?
Oh, I don't know how special you want to call it, but I am imbibing. I am enjoying.
Good. Sounds like you need it.
I'm going to have an Urban Artifact Cabriole.
Now, what is that?
Which is a 10% Mapleberry Midwest Fruit Tart beer.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't know what a cabriole is. I didn't know if this was like a drink or a weed thing or food. So it's a beer.
It's a beer. Mapleberry beer.
That sounds wonderful.
It's really good. I do also have the weed thing. I actually don't remember what strain it is. I want to say citronella, but don't quote me.
Only stems.
But no, this was a pre-roll that was given to me by my friend Tiffany.
Nice. Is that the completion of your inebriation?
It is, indeed.
Wonderful. Tonight, I have 2 things. I was thinking about doing something different, but I couldn't think of what. So I made a cup of coffee. I am I'm having some decaf coffee. I've been really into instant coffee recently. I know it's been big on TikTok, people making drinks with instant coffee, and I've been doing that for a while because it was easier when I was at the office instead of working from home. Instant coffee is not the shit it used to be. You can get some really good coffee, and this is some of the best coffee, legitimately, I've ever had. I'm gonna have to get their non-decaf version, but I got it on Amazon. It had a ton of good reviews, but it's Mount Hagen Organic Fair Trade freeze-dried instant coffee, and it is so good. So I have a cup of coffee in my Saturn of Dayton coffee mug because I had a Saturn from Dayton once. And then, this is almost gone. I was drinking a lot of it when we were getting ready. And then I got a new NA beer I'm excited about. I got it at Meijer. Shout out to our favorite grocery, apparently. It is Go Brewing's non-alcoholic The Story Double IPA with Simcoe, Mosaic, and Citra hops. And I have not tried this yet, but I'm going to have it once the coffee is finished, and I will report back. But it's a really cool looking can. And they've made the aluminum black somehow, that where the label isn't, and it looks awesome.
All right.
Now, do you have any special sack soup seasoning tonight?
I hate soup. It's the wettest of foods.
Oh, soup, right. Yeah, right.
Nothing for you. Soup. Thrilling 3-day soup spectacular.
As a throwback episode, I am also throwing it back with Mr. Bubble.
Nice. Do you throw it back to Mr. Bubble often, Austin?
Oh, I throw it back to Mr. Bubble all the time.
I'm sure he enjoys that.
Mr. Bubble is daddy.
Oh, no. There goes that sponsorship option. Unless he's freaky like that.
Daddy Bubble.
Daddy Bubble.
That's what they call me in the yard.
Of course they do.
You ain't my daddy.
I got something very special. I don't have a full, long story or anything, but I picked up a bath bomb while I was over in Iceland, and I thought this would be a good episode to use it on. It is from Urd, U-R-D, made in Reykjavik, Iceland. It is Arctic thyme and Epsom salt, pure essential oils. And it smells wonderful. My bag on the flight home, just like, this all you could smell, and it smelled so good.
I'm sure everyone appreciated it.
I'm sure they did. Ooh, this is pretty. There's like actual big flakes of Arctic thyme in it. You can like see chunks of seasoning, like literal seasoning in my sack soup seasoning.
I'm gonna kick it up a little bit.
Well done.
That's going under the hose right now. Oh, that is exploding like crazy. Oh, and yeah, it looks like I just got a bunch of basil. Oh, and some purple flowers are in there too. This is wonderful. I could sit in this for a while, so thank God this is at the beginning of the episode. Now, normally at this point, Austin, I ask what we're talking about tonight, but we already talked about what we're talking about tonight. So what do we talk about?
I think we talk about it.
We'll talk. Start the talking. I beg you.
All right, so Barry Sonnenfeld, he got his start in porn.
Did he?
Yeah, that was in the commentary. Oh, no, wait, no, it wasn't. I found that out online.
I was going to say, I would have written that down.
Sorry. So, yeah, Barry Sonnenfeld, he directed the pilot. He got his start in porn. Just a little background on him. He was the director of photography for In Our Water, which was an Oscar nom.
Never heard of it.
He then went on to be the cinematographer for the Coen brothers on Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, and Miller's Crossing.
I know of the Coen brothers, but I've not seen any of those films. So that's super cool because they're known for their cinematography. So if he was director of photography or whatever, that means he was in charge of all that.
Mm-hmm. And it was around the same time, it was right after that he worked with Danny DeVito on Throw Mama from the Train, as well as Rob Reiner on When Harry Met Sally.
Not seen either of those either.
Then we get to where he really made a name for himself as a director, as Barry Sonnenfeld. He directed the 2 Addams Family movies.
I've seen one of them.
He directed Get Shorty.
Nope.
He directed the Men in Black trilogy.
Seen those.
And Wild Wild West.
And that's a classic. He talks about those a bunch in this commentary. It's his time with Men in Black and Wild Wild West. But those are like, that's huge. Like, I can see why.
Right. That was some of the biggest stuff that he had done at the time, especially.
Did you look up what he's done since?
I have a few notes on things he's done. He co-produced Enchanted.
Oh, that's a big one.
He directed Pushing Daisies, which won an Emmy. He's also written 2 books. Barry Sonnenfeld, Call Your Mother, Memoirs of a Neurotic Filmmaker.
Oh.
And Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, True Stories from a Career in Hollywood.
I might have to check those out. It sounds like an interesting man.
Well, he does. He was fun to listen to on the pilot.
Yes, I agree. He was very fun to listen to, and we'll get into my thoughts on the 2 episodes at the end.
So a little background on Ben then. He is the creator of The Tick, all things The Tick. That is what he's best known for. Not specifically this iteration of the show, probably the cartoon.
But just, it's a big deal.
Yeah, probably the cartoon more than anything, but the comic, the cartoon, both versions of the show, like all the toys and everything else. I thought it was interesting, and I can totally see this once I read it. He helped create the Venture Brothers.
I can see that.
Which was actually partially inspired by The Tick.
I can also see that.
Somebody's in my car.
Right, that is a legitimate superpower.
Seen him do that from another country away.
Big deal.
He worked for Joss Whedon.
Why do I know the name?
He was a writer for Firefly.
Oh, that's why. which we will likely be doing Firefly at some point.
We will. He wrote and directed an Angel episode that was nominated for a Hugo Award.
Wow.
He contributed to character creation for Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Don't know that one.
That was a Neil Patrick Harris thing, I think.
I do remember that being a thing. I never watched it, though.
A lot of guys ignore the laugh, and that's about standards. I mean, if you're gonna get into the evil league of evil, you have to have a memorable laugh. What do you think, Bad Horse didn't work on his Winnie?
And then he was executive producer, writer, and director on Supernatural.
Wonderful. That's one we can definitely never do because that had about 4,000 seasons.
Right.
And I've seen them all.
He's also producer and writer on Gotham.
Great show. Is he really?
Yep.
That's odd. I mean, it is very camp superhero, so I guess that could be part of it. They do lean into the camp on there, and I mean, that's the Tick.
Beyond that, both of them, again, were producers on the Amazon Prime Tick series.
I still need to watch that.
Me too.
Speaking of writing and directing, kind of off topic to this conversation, but not to our show, I found out that, Jared Hess, who directed Napoleon Dynamite, is the director of the new Minecraft movie.
Interesting.
How odd.
It's all the rave.
I've heard it is better than expected.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you're not a Minecraftman, are you?
I'm not. So I don't know how you want to kind of jump in and go through this. I have my notes sort of organized, not by episode necessarily, but sort of by episode.
Oh, I did like chronological, like we would do a normal episode. And I thought we could just go through it, but we can do whatever.
Well, the first thing that I kind of organized into is like there were a lot of people that Barry talked about. So I just kind of made a section that was talking about his collaborators.
I found this episode much more interesting than the next. I mean, I loved hearing from Ben, but his was much more reactionary to what was happening in the episode, where I learned a lot more about the show and how it was created from Barry.
I agree with that. And that kind of is what I was saying about the other episodes, is they're all just Ben doing commentary, and it really is just him reacting to the episode. That was a good way of putting it.
Yes. Which is fun. I think it was like him enjoying his creation, almost not from the first time, but, from a viewer's standpoint, as opposed to a creator. So it was fun to hear.
It was. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but Barry's, I feel like I got more from.
So if people are going to be watching this, I think maybe we can go down chronological with my notes, and you can chime in with what you have written down, just so we have some kind of logic behind what we're talking about and when.
Bring us on home.
Obviously, this is going to go the same way as the pilot, because that's the episode. This is a commentary track. But it begins, as we discussed on that very first episode years ago now, which is weird to think about. It starts with the Tick on top of a gas station making a speech. And I just mentioned this because Barry says that Patrick Warburton was, quote, man created to play the Tick. And I think we said that like word for word. He is the Tick.
He is. He owns that role.
Destiny dressed you this morning, my friend, and now fear is trying to pull off your pants. If you give up, if you give in, then you're going to end up naked with fear just standing there laughing at your dangling unmentionables.
One thing I guessed at, but I thought it might have been, like puppeteering, but the antenna that move on Patrick Warburton's suit are actually motorized and kind of were an advancement in costuming technology to make work, which is very cool.
Yeah, remote controlled micromotors.
He also apparently hated them, Patrick Warburton.
Yes, he was jealous of them.
Because people were laughing when they moved and not because he did something funny.
He would realize that, what he was doing wasn't that funny, and he couldn't see the antenna moving on top of his head. So he's like, you're laughing at the antenna, aren't you?
Yeah, you would hear the crew and the other cast laughing when he wasn't doing anything funny and knew that the antenna were stealing his spotlight. Which is great.
And apparently he would say things like, I think we have a little too much antenna going on here, and stuff like that.
I'm surprised they didn't leave him saying that in the episode at some point. Because that seems like something the Tick would say to himself.
Maybe.
I did actually put stars next to a couple lines in case we wanted to talk about favorite lines. But one of them is right here in the scene too at the bus station, because they're talking about, the extras on set. Barry talks about this old man that the Tick talks to when he's getting his bus ticket. And he says, quote, "This man was a great actor for his nose alone." And apparently he always cast this old man in movies and shows because he has a really big nose.
Yep.
I love it. Now that I know more of what you've described about Barry, that sounds spot on. He discusses how this episode was shot in only 8 days, which is pretty crazy. I mean, especially looking at today's landscape where shows will take multiple years to make like 8 episodes.
Yeah, the pilot was 8 days.
He said it was a ton of fun, though, for that reason, where he was previously been working on a bunch of movies, which were, long form and took years to finish, and being able to create this thing in only 8 days was, I'm sure, very much like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, he also mentioned, at least at the time of filming this, that this was his favorite work.
I mean, I can see why.
Well, he said he felt like it was everything he does in his films in a condensed form, and it's almost like a highlight reel.
I must tell you that, for me, The Tick, I feel, is the single best thing I have directed. In a 22-minute nutshell, it represents all the things that I feel are endemic of my directing. The visual style, the sense of droll, quirky humor.
It sounds like it was just very much great chemistry, between all the cast with each other and the cast and crew. Like, everyone was just super into this and what they were going for, which I'm sure is not always the case and wonderful when it happens.
Right, definitely.
I do love that Barry had to convince Ben to make this. I assumed it would be the other way around, with Ben shopping this around to make a live action, but it was the opposite, where they loved the idea so much because one of his employees was a big fan of the cartoon. They had to go to Ben to talk him into making this.
Barry credits the idea for a live action Tick to Floaty Suarez, who is a producer.
Also a wonderful name.
They were a big fan of the cartoon, and it was actually their idea to meet with Patrick Warburton as well.
And they said that they were imagining this as Seinfeld adjacent, which is something that we said ourselves many times while recording that season.
Yes, a few times in the commentary they mentioned Seinfeld, and Barry specifically did want this to be like a Seinfeld superhero show, again, where it's what happens in between everything.
Which I'd never considered about Seinfeld because, it's famously the show about nothing, but it is very much about the in-between.
Right.
It's, the moments after work, but before the movie you're going to see. It's,
It's the typically mundane.
Yeah, which is very cool. I'd never looked at Seinfeld like that specifically, but it was cool to hear that was what they were going for, and especially because we picked up on it too, and we're both huge Seinfeld fans.
Right. And Barry also specifically says that he wanted the Chinese bar restaurant they hang out in to be like their Seinfeld diner.
And it's a real cafe.
It's actually a famous cafe. It's the Formosa Cafe in Hollywood.
I'd never heard of it.
And Barry wanted to do more filming there. Like, he wanted that to be their spot. He wasn't involved in the further episodes and didn't shape that part of it as much. But what I thought was really funny is in the episode with Ben, he talks about the cafe as well, and says that, this was a change from the cartoon. In the cartoon, they hang out at a diner.
I mean, it's about the same thing, Ben.
But, like, I thought that was so funny. He's like, he wants to make this bar their Seinfeld diner, when in the show they already hang out in a diner.
I didn't write that note down, but that's great. I didn't pick up on that nuance. That's hilarious. Before we skip it, just so I don't forget as we move forward, I do love that Christopher Lloyd was in this show as a favor to Barry, the director, but he never says what the favor is for, but he says it multiple times, like he's like, I paid off this debt.
It was a favor because of their relationship, because of the Addams Family.
I don't know. I got the vibe that there was something else. Like he owed him.
There was a body.
Yeah. a video somewhere that needed deleted.
I need a favor.
But yeah, I thought that was great that he did it as a favor. But he stresses that multiple times, which is just interesting. And also on this same scene, because, I mean, we also talked about the opening scene alone for like half an episode. It is very iconic, but I love learning that Patrick Warburton was actually standing on the edge of a 2-story building in this scene and jumps off of it into a parachute or something, or like a trampoline. I forget what he says.
One of those big inflatable things.
So yeah, that was real, which is wild. Also, when he falls through the ceiling of a building and you see 2 random people sitting on a couch, that is Ben and Barry, which was fun.
Yeah, that's Ben and Barry, and there's also a part later in the episode where a voice off camera yells, "Hey, idiot," and that's Barry as well.
Yes, which is great.
Hey, idiot!
I love those little, not Easter eggs, but, the creator putting them in as like a bit part.
Right, yeah, no, I like that too, little cameos.
That's the word I'm looking for. I couldn't think of cameo.
Speaking of cameos, you can also see Will Smith's assistant at the end of the pilot.
Yeah, he's in one of the booths, and apparently he was such a big fan of the Tick, he went up to Barry and asked if he could be in it. That's so cool. Like, you could have something like that, especially with something so niche as the Tick. I'm sure, if I was working with, a creator and loved something super niche that they were suddenly making like a prime time show for, I'd be, over the moon to be able to be involved.
Right.
Next, we learn a bit about Arthur, and I thought it was really interesting that he specifically says that Arthur was a stand-in for the audience, which you said almost word for word in an episode once.
Did I?
Yes, you did. Oh, I don't know which one. Probably one of the first 2. But no, it would have been later, I think, as we learned more about these characters. But yeah, it was you. I remember you saying that, and it was like clicking for me, like, oh, you're totally right. Like, Arthur is, the normie in this, and he's
right.
the one viewing the ridiculousness of this.
He brings the realism to it, which they both bring up multiple times.
David was really good at kind of nailing reality, like a real person in all of these ridiculous situations, which really helped as a foil to the Tick, to Patrick, who by nature was over the top at all times.
And also, they said that Arthur is written to be like Will Smith in Men in Black, and I never thought about Will Smith in that light because he is such a ridiculous character in himself. Like, he's a normal person in this wild world, but he's not a normal person.
Right. He's the gateway. He's how you get introduced to everything else.
May I ask why you felt little Tiffany deserved to die?
Well, first I was going to pop this guy hanging from the street light, and then I realized, he's just working out. And how would I feel if somebody come running in the gym, bust me in my ass while I'm on the treadmill? Then I saw this snarling beast guy, and I noticed he had a tissue in his hand. I realized, he's not snarling. He's sneezing. Ain't no real threat there. Then I saw little Tiffany. I'm thinking, 8-year-old white girl, middle of the ghetto, bunch of monsters, this time of night with quantum physics books. She about to start some shit, Zed.
Yeah, but Arthur is much more normal somehow. Of a dude.
In his moth costume.
Yeah.
He's a neurotic little man.
Yeah, he is. Soon after we meet Arthur in the episode, there's a scene where the Tick is fighting the commies. And apparently this was supposed to be like a long, dramatic, well-made fight scene, but they ran out of time for the studio, so they just had to do a bunch of jump cuts.
Yeah, they said they filmed most of those exterior shots in 2 nights at Universal.
Mm-hmm. He does say something interesting here that I don't totally agree with. Barry says that this was not written to be camp, but more as a mockumentary, and I do not agree at all. Like, if that's what you were going for, you failed, sir. In what way is this a mockumentary and this is 1,000% camp? Which isn't bad, I love it, sir.
But he's right that it's not campy the way that it could be campy.
Yeah, well, I was about to say there's no, winks at the camera, but I'm pretty sure the Tick does that multiple times.
There's a lot of camp that you could do in a superhero thing, especially a live action coming from cartoon superhero thing.
Yeah.
And they don't do that, and it is...
They do treat it serious.
I get his point, especially because of the way they made it the in-between. It's the behind the scenes. So it kind of, it's following them around outside of where you see them. So in a way, it does feel like a documentary.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They could be real corny when they were like fighting things. And I do like how he says that he told like the crew and then like the editors that this isn't a comedy. Like treat it like it's not a comedy, which was probably ahead of its time because this would have been like pre-Office Parks and Rec style humor where it was very straight-faced absurdism almost. And looking at it in that light, this show was that before that was popular.
Yeah, he makes several comments about that. He's about not letting anyone not take it seriously. Treat it as the realest of real. Don't let the editors know you're making a comedy. They'll print it too bright. Like, there was a lot of like, don't make it a comedy as you make it funny.
You always create absurd situations and then always have the actor play the reality of the situation. You don't want the actors to admit they're in a comedy. You don't even want the film lab to know you're making a comedy because they'll print everything too bright. Because they say, oh, if it's a comedy, it should be bright.
Yeah, you want the scene to feel real even though it's something that's so absurd that it can't feel real. You want it to feel surreal.
Yeah, as I said in our Robio of The Tick, I think if this show was made today, maybe not on a major network, but like if this show was as is, no changes, released on like YouTube or, even I could see maybe like Netflix or something, but if it was released today, I think it would be a huge hit, like absolutely massive, because I think it was just ahead of its time in its view of comedy and the way it was created. I can understand why at the time the Fox execs were confused about what they were going for.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as style, too, Barry notes that he used a wide-angle lens for most of it, and it gives a sense of immediacy.
He also mentions that the time period that this show is supposed to be in doesn't exist, and that was on purpose. He wanted this to feel as if it was in a time period that wasn't real, which is an interesting concept. Like, I had to pause and really, like, wrap my brain around what that meant. But it's kind of cool. It's a very lofty goal for a show like this.
In a sense, I feel like it's an embodiment of what is the comic world.
Yeah, like, almost, like, mid-century, but also kind of futuristic, but very backwards. It is interesting.
He just said they kept the cars, like, nondescript and kind of bubbly shaped.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it, you have a much older car and, a 90s car, but none of it feels weird when you're looking at it. But it does feel... I don't know. It feels like a false reality in a good way. It feels like a made-up city in a good way, almost like noir.
Yeah, and looking down a couple lines of my notes, Barry explicitly says that he thinks Fox didn't understand that the show is a comedy.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, it was very different. I mean, Seinfeld probably would be the only similar thing, but even then, it's much different than that.
Right.
And back then, superheroes were, pure camp for children. So this probably was confusing.
That's not true. You had the Superman movies by now.
Yeah, but, they were still, like, serious-ish. They weren't comedies. Like, there wasn't, that wasn't, the idea wasn't around unless it was a kid's show.
Batman?
I don't know if I'd consider that a comedy. And he was very much going for comedy in The Tick. So it is a weird thing. It is a very weird thing.
You're saying that the Adam West Batman show isn't a comedy?
Are you a vocal group?
I beg your pardon?
I thought perhaps you might be a singing duo, the outfits and all that?
No, we're duly deputized officers of the law. You may return to your business, citizen.
I don't think it was meant to be. It was goofy, and they knew it was goofy, but I do not think they were going for it to have a label.
Now that's fucking camp.
That is camp, yes. But I don't think they were filming that thinking they were making a comedy, like uppercase C. This was, an action show that was goofy.
Fair enough.
That's how I see it, at least. So I can see why they were confused. I don't think, thinking on it, the idea of a pure comedy superhero piece of media for not just kids, like the next example I can think of would be something like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Sure.
So it is kind of untread space. There is many more now because superheroes are everything, but it's still not like I mean, you have like Deadpool, which is very much that, and I can see there's some traces of like the Tick's comedy in that, but it is an odd thing. The Tick is an odd piece of media, but I love it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an enigma.
Networks are always saying, we want something different. We don't want something that looks like every other show on television. We love The Tick because it's visual and the writing is unusual and it's quirky and different and doesn't look like anything else on television. And then 6 months later, you're hearing from the same executives saying, the problem with The Tick is it's quirky, it's unusual, it doesn't look like anything else on television.
Let's try this beer. It's good. Not life-changing. It's different, but it's good. Pretty mild. Soon after what we talked about with the fight, we meet Batman Well and Captain Liberty for the first time. The actor playing Batman Well said that he would only do it if he didn't have to do a Spanish accent, and his very first line is a Spanish accent. Which I thought was funny.
Haven't seen you around before. I am Batmanuel.
Yeah, he specifically said that he wouldn't do it.
Was it Nestor Campbell?
Yeah, Nestor Campbell.
He knows about us. He retweeted us once.
Nice.
So did Liz, what's her last name, who played Captain Liberty. She is also, and so has Ben Edlund. So 3 of the people from the show know this podcast exists.
Nice. Barry responded to Nestor saying that with, I said, I want you to do the Spanish accent. You will be in the show and you'll be brilliant. And history was made.
And then with Liz, he said he worked with her on a show called Maximum Bob, which I'd never heard of, and I really want to look up because if it only had 1 season, we may have to do that because both the name alone, I'm intrigued.
Corey, it only had 1 season. I looked it up.
What? Yes! Oh my god, that makes me so happy. Does it look good?
Kinda, yeah.
That's amazing. I'm so excited. You don't even understand. Jesus H. fucking Christ.
The 1 season rabbit hole continues.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's how we found Everything You Know Is Wrong, was from one of how did we find that?
I don't remember how I found that, to be honest.
It was somebody mentioning No, it was the actor in the final episode of The Tick. We were looking at his IMDb, and we found Everything You Know Is Wrong.
That's right.
I do think it's funny that, what's his name? Barry. Their names are so similar. Yeah, Barry, the director, said that he loves Liz. Quote, she talks fast but articulates, which is the secret to comedy. Is that the secret to comedy, Austin?
It might be.
If I start talking really fast but I can't do it, but articulating very precisely, does that make me funny?
Well, once you start articulating quickly, then we'll talk.
I will work on my articulations later. Get that tongue a-moving, if you know what I mean. Well done, sir. 10 out of 10. He mentions soon after that the Tick is the ultimate innocence, which we have discussed, and I think it was Ben in the second episode says that he's like a golden retriever, which I believe is an exact comparison you made.
Yeah.
But he also says that he thinks that the Tick is likely a virgin. The director said that, not Ben.
He said he probably doesn't know what sex or kissing are.
Well, why would you even have to think about that? I guess if you're writing the show, but like he kind of just throws that out there and moves on, and I'm like, hold on. I need to know more about what you think about the Tick and sex. Because you can't just put that out there and like move on.
Well, later he says that he believes that there may be a possible homoerotic nature to the Tick and Arthur.
He does, which I could see being one-sided, just like their superhero relationship, where the Tick just thinks Arthur is like a great dude and his best friend, and Arthur would be in love with the Tick.
Right.
We learn a lot about Patrick's costume soon after this, which is discussed in length by both people.
Yes, that's true. Apparently it was 16 pounds of silicone rubber that was worn up to 16 hours at a time.
Oh my god. And didn't breathe at all, and so he would just be huffing and puffing and sweating like crazy, and they had to use KY jelly to get him in and out of the suit. And Barry says that it gave Patrick probably depression and perspiration, which is a great line. It sounds miserable, so I commend Patrick for doing such a wonderful performance through that. That couldn't have been easy.
Right. No, of course. I also thought it was interesting. I think around the same point they noted that... I think my camera just turned off.
Roll the tongue at it again. It'll turn it right back on.
Okay, so no more video. My card's full.
You've been working with Barry on some porn?
Apparently. So, around the same time, they mentioned that they surrounded the set colors.
Yes.
To make the Tick's costume pop at all times.
Which I'd not noticed, but it makes a lot of sense. It was a lot of like browns and, muddy hues and, oranges to make the blue really stand out, which makes a ton of sense. It does. But I never thought about.
It was also interesting. Arthur's wings could actually fold out.
Yep.
They could not retract, however.
He said there was one scene where you see them go back in and they had to do that with CGI.
Yep.
They ran out of money during the pilot. So the last few scenes are very jump cutty for that reason. They had to improvise sets and designs. He said he was very sad about how the elevator crash looked, and I didn't even notice. I mean, I watched it again with the commentary, and it still looked fine to me. But I guess if this is your creative work and it didn't turn out the way you wanted, I can see that. But it is, this was duct taped together, which is crazy for a brand new prime time show for a major network.
Yeah, they said the Red Scare costume was cobbled together specifically as well, which, again, the same thing, they ran out of money, whereas the other costumes were done by Colleen Atwood, who, Jesus Christ, does she have a fucking resume?
Yeah, he goes into it.
He goes into it a little bit that, she... I think won an Oscar, was nominated for an Oscar for Chicago at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But she did costuming for Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, Ed Wood, That Thing You Do, Memoirs of a Geisha, Public Enemies, Arrow, Into the Woods, Fantastic Beasts, pretty much all of Tim Burton's movies.
Wow.
And Welcome to the Black Parade.
What?
Yep.
That's incredible. Sorry if you hear water. I underestimated how much water to put in my tub. I usually put way too much and it's like overflowing, and I overshot the other direction. So the tops of my thighs were getting chilly because they were in the air.
Okay.
Also, how did we not notice this was a Chinese cafe? Like, I wrote that down. Like, how did we miss that?
Well, they called it was the Lonely Panda in the show.
Yeah, but like, it's very obvious in this pilot that it is a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And we totally missed that until like 4 episodes in.
Yeah, I don't know. I truly don't.
It does sound like The Tick was an incubator for a lot of people's future careers. Like, there were a ton of talented people who were very deeply involved with this weird show, but like while they were like growing in their careers, like they weren't no names, but like they weren't major players, but a lot of major creators came out of this, which is very cool.
Sure.
Very much gave Star Trek vibes in that way, where like a ton of people who were involved in like the next generation went on to create awesome things just because of the great experience they had working there and learning from other amazing people on set while they created it.
Sure.
It also sounds like it was a ton of fun to work on.
Yeah, and they obviously have had some pretty notable collaborations of their own over the years.
Yeah. One last thing on this pilot, and I'm sure we will talk about the next episode much less. Barry, the director, said that he really wants to create a movie at some point from this show, and oh my God, would I would die if that was created.
I wish.
Yes. Can we get a Serenity situation like now?
Serenity now?
I wasn't even going for that. I was going for a Firefly, but...
Yeah, good job. Look what you did.
Serenity now! Serenity now!
What is that? Doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say, Serenity now!
Are you supposed to yell it?
The man on the tape wasn't specific.
I came back around. reached underneath and pulled out a Seinfeld quote on accident. God, that would be wonderful. Can you imagine? I'd buy every seat in the theater just to see it in its glory. IMAX, yes. I think seeing the Tick and Arthur in a theater would be incredible.
I want to see Patrick Warburton on the big screen in 16 pounds of silicone rubber.
Oh, I do most days, but in a theater would be incredible. Did you have anything else to discuss on that episode? I'm sure we'll get to other parts of it, but do you want to move on to...
No, go on.
Briefly discuss the second episode? I mean, I was going to talk about it at the end, but we already touched on it. I very much personally enjoyed the first one a ton more. I thought I would, going into this, looking at who was talking in each episode, I thought for sure I was going to much more enjoy the Ben episodes, hearing from the actual creator of the Tick. But it was kind of disappointing commentary, in my opinion.
It had some good insights, it had some good information, but yeah, Barry's was much more enthusiastic and informative in a lot of ways.
I did note that Ben considers Arthur Interrupted the second episode of the show, which I know there was some contention between us about what the actual episode order was supposed to be. So it was good to know that that was the second episode, according to the creator.
What does he know?
A lot, apparently. He also agreed that Patrick was the perfect Tick, so hearing that from the creator of the Tick is huge, I think.
Yep.
He also thought the robotic antenna were crucial to the character.
He does say that.
He says that the Tick has a very loose grasp of reality, which sums up the Tick pretty definitively.
He also says that reality itself is very loose there as well.
And that his concept of superheroes in this world, distilled down to one word would be ineffective, which I thought was hilarious. And it's such a, if you had that going into the writing, that's the maxim for writing any superhero in this show, is that they have to be ineffective. That is brilliant. That's so smart.
It's perfect.
There's so much nuance there, comedically, that is wonderful. Because you could just say these are bad superheroes, and I think that would be a not as great show. But ineffective superheroes has so much more potential, because that doesn't mean they're bad at their job. At, being superheroes, they're just bad at getting results.
Right.
He does seem very genuinely impressed with all of the acting. That's something I got out of his, is that he just has a genuine love for how this came out and how the actors did their jobs portraying his characters. So that was, really wonderful to hear.
Yeah, there was a lot of love from both Barry and Ben on that subject.
I do love learning in this one that they didn't actually write almost any comedy for Batman well.
Yep.
But the actor did such good line reading that he turned anything they gave him into comedy.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how he does it, but somehow he makes everything funny. We rarely wrote a funny line for him.
Which is great to learn, because I don't consider him a comedic actor. But the first thing that comes to mind is his role in the Batman movies, which are, very much not funny movies. So that's probably coloring my perspective of him as an actor. But it is great that they didn't actively write him as funny, but we both enjoyed his character immensely in the show.
Definitely. He is quite funny. And that was later in this episode, but Ben admits that he didn't like the fondue scene, but Nestor made it funny.
Yeah, he wanted to write it, remove it from the episode, but seeing what Nestor did with it caused him to leave it in because he did it so well.
Yeah, he hated the gag initially.
Fondue?
Yes.
Why?
It's the food of lovers. Unless, of course, they're lactose intolerant.
Another thing I learned from this that both brings me so much joy and anger equally, Austin, is that the scenes with the Tick in the toilet were supposed to be much longer.
Yes.
And the way he describes what they wrote, oh my God, sounds like the funniest shit ever. I want a whole episode of just the Tick in a toilet.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
You want to go through what he says he was originally written for this?
In one script, the Tick was to end up trapped in the bathroom while the toilet and the bathtub have an argument, and they exclude the Tick from said argument.
So the Tick's being ignored by the voices in his head, which is how he describes it, which is, I would love to see Patrick Warburton portray that. That sound, I Oh, I want
And then
that.
it goes further. He says at one point the toilet and bathtub were to be arguing whether Chinese people were in the Bible. But apparently Fox wasn't into talking toilets.
Yeah, he says explicitly that Fox wanted to cut down on the amount of talking toilets. Which, what? It was one of the funniest parts. And that's wonderful.
It's hilarious. I really would love to have seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Damn you, Fox.
I'm betting on Highlight in the Cayman Islands. I invested in something called News Corp.
Dad, that's Fox!
Ah! Undo! Oh!
Like, Patrick, just make that and put it up on, like, YouTube.
Yeah, lock yourself in your bathroom. Patrick Warburton, lock yourself in your bathroom until you hear voices.
You mean that's not a thing normal people do on a regular basis? Because I do that frequently.
Hear voices?
When I lock myself in the bathroom with the toilet.
Okay.
Only then. But,
only then. Got it.
I do it from time to time just to, dust off the lint of that relationship I have.
I mean, the toilet was already talking, but he's going to have to stay in there long enough for the bathtub to start talking.
And imagine getting a bidet in that situation.
Nope.
Way to yes and, sir. No bidets for the tick.
Nope.
Is that going to be the episode title?
I pictured it with a high-pitched voice, and I didn't like it, so I noped it.
Oh, I saw it more as gleeking. Like, the bidet didn't have a voice. It was like one of the attachments on the toilet. It sprayed when it was angry or excited.
Okay. I see.
Just as a normal person sprays when they're angry or excited.
There's only so much spraying that I want to think about normal people doing when they're excited.
Oh, I go to that subreddit all the time.
Do you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Garden Hoses Anonymous?
I would not be surprised if there was a garden hose subreddit. I've talked about on our Blue Sky that I think podcasts should be hornier, just in general, so I'm adding that in. That's the new vibe I'm going for.
Horny. Yeah. Crazy horny.
Okay. Horny pods.
I feel like podcasts are very unhorny, and, that's a gap in the market. We need hornier podcasts, especially from Ohio, which is known around the world as the sexiest place to be.
We're porn capital of America.
It's because we're so sad. So back to the episode. The first time we see Dave Foley, who's the psych doc, I didn't even catch. I probably did, but, it's so mundane because they never reference it. But he has a cast on his arm. That wasn't a costume. He just showed up on set without telling anybody that he had broken his hand. Which is such a wild move to make. So there's no preparation. Like, hey guys, what the fuck is on your arm? I love imagining how that conversation went.
It worked, though?
Yeah, Ben says that they actually really liked the idea because if you were the director of a psych ward filled with people who thought they were superheroes, you probably would be beat up pretty often. Intentionally or accidentally. So it worked with the character in a way they didn't expect, but I still think it's funny that he showed up on set with a cast on his arm without telling anyone.
Just nonchalant, broken hand or whatever.
Hey guys. We also learned that this episode had to be re-edited because the first draft was too depressing. It wasn't funny.
It was heavily influenced by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and they hobbled together a bunch of very unappealing looking people and shot very long, sad shots that were the in-betweens, and all that stuff got cut because even Ben admits that it was just a weird, depressing thing.
Which is hilarious. Accidentally making a depressing episode. We'll probably do that at some point.
Probably. But, I mean, it does make sense with, he was he admits that he, wanted to be heavily influenced by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and, they filmed more than they used is the reality of it, but there's a reason for that. But those shots make sense, and the vibe they were going for makes sense.
Guys, we might have to re-edit this. This isn't funny. This is just sad.
That movie we were using, it wasn't a funny one.
I don't know if I've actually ever seen the movie all the way through, but I really enjoyed the book. But that's not a funny book either.
Nope.
One line, though, in here that I really enjoyed was they actively enjoyed seeing what they could put into a primetime television show, which I'm sure that was fun.
Yeah.
Like, what can we get away with? Wait, how can we push this envelope?
And, I mean, it doesn't even feel like they pushed it all that hard.
No, but it was also a different time.
And he was coming from the, like, children's TV world.
You know, and this was in a lot of ways, their first major show, so I can understand some apprehension, you know, in pushing the envelope, but I love that they just went the other direction in their mindset. Whether that, you know, came off in the show or not, but just having that mindset going into it, I'm sure was fun.
For sure.
I did love in learning that Arthur's mom and sister were supposed to be recurring characters if the show continued. And I think that they could have really explored that dynamic, you know, because Arthur's already the straight guy in this wild situation. So having even more normal people, I'm sure you could have a lot of fun with.
First, let's be careful throwing the word normal around. They weren't that normal.
Standard people? That sounds like I'm an alien or a god. Give me one standard person, please. I would rather enjoy that.
It's the one person standard.
It's like being another daddy.
Exactly.
The idea of the Tick and Arthur having to deal with essentially normal people, like Arthur's mom and Arthur's sister. To me, that's one of the sort of the really interesting and some of the funniest material comes from this like collision between, you know, the nutballs and conventional human beings.
Ben wanted to do a cookout episode.
Yes.
With the mom and the sister coming back.
Yes. Which maybe with their normal friends, even more standard people.
Yes.
As beige as possible. Give me your beigest standard person, put them next to the Tick cooking some wieners.
Are we trusting the Tick with a grill?
Oh, he'd probably get an argument with it, for sure. Now, do you think the Tick is a propane or a charcoalman?
Oh, I think he's a charcoalman.
I don't think he's either, but I don't know what he would be instead. Magma. He'd probably get some magma somehow and cook over that.
I'll just leap over to a volcano.
He would, and he'd bring it back, and he would cook some wieners.
He probably prefers to use a car fire.
Now, do you think Jimmy would be there? Mr. Carter?
I hope so.
R.I.P. Rip in peace.
I mean, I hope.
Maybe that's why they haven't made the movie, because they can't now, because Jimmy can't be in it.
They're not making the movie because Christopher Lloyd doesn't owe Barry many more favors.
We gotta intervene. We gotta get a favor. A life debt created between the two of them again.
It's time.
It's time.
Oh, great Scott!
Now, the last thing I had to say was just a single line that Ben says, which I genuinely love. Like, it's a good aphorism. He says that the Tick always brought love, but he brought it with a hammer. And I love that. It's so spot on, but it's a great way to live, too. Like, you know, bring love, but do it in such a, you know, over-the-top way is just wonderful.
Definitely.
I thought about that a lot. Like, I put a bunch of stars next to it, not like because it's a funny line, just because I genuinely enjoyed that. Like, it's such a good description of the character.
It is. It really is. I think that he brings that up when the Tick's mashing Arthur's mother and sister's heads together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the wild hug at the end, where he attempts to show physical affection. Did you have anything else to discuss? I'm open to discussing. That was just the end of my notes.
I think that's a good place to end. I have a few more things, but nothing major.
Bring them up. Tell me. Show me your little things.
Ben does spend a little bit of time talking about, you know, where the show fell short. Mm-hmm. And he mentions specifically the tonal inconsistencies of the show.
Which I think he's being hard on himself on that, because any show, like we've talked about, like a first season's hard because you're figuring out characters. Like I know he talked about, you know, they rushed the relationship between Batman-Well and Captain Liberty, but you can always back off that. But like...
And they were backing off of it. But, you know, he does admit that, like, they over-caricaturized them at the beginning and, like, kind of let them go too far too fast. And, you know, he kind of says that they were, it's nice to hear, but it's also sad. He's like, because, you know, they were heading somewhere, they were building something, and he really does believe and did believe that with time, you know, they would have ironed out those things that felt like more than one thing conflicting. Because I think we've even mentioned that too in some of those early mid-episodes. Mm-hmm. You know, there are times where it's like the Batman-Well or the Captain Liberty we've been introduced to is kind of at odds with the one that we're seeing now, even though maybe we like the one we're seeing now more.
Yeah, I think we said like word for word when we meet Batman and Captain Liberty when we did that episode was that they are characters, like just purely caricatures. So it's interesting hearing him say that.
Yeah, and I liked the way Ben said it, that they felt like two different characters competing for the same suit. Because for a little bit they did.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't enough differentiation between the two.
But they were working it out. You could really tell that watching the show go on even for as little as we got.
Yeah, 100%. But again, I do think he's being a bit too hard because I know we've mentioned it before. I think even with The Tick was that, especially they mentioned Seinfeld. You watch season 1 of Seinfeld, it's awful. Like, I mean, it's not bad, but the characters are all over the place. They're still building that. That's any show. So it did make me sad to hear that when he was talking about that. And I don't think he should feel that way.
He did say he wanted the tone. It's kind of funny the way he says this. He said he wanted the tone to be kind of cartoon-like, but you were allowed to do things that kind of approached creepy familiarity. And he says, I can't even describe it. I think if I could describe the tone, we would have achieved it.
And I think that gets back to, our Robio on that season is I don't see how this show could have kept going. I love it. It's wonderful. But I can see why it was canceled. It was such a weird thing. I don't even, just like you said, like I can't picture, what this show would have become. I would have loved to have seen it, but it's just such an odd thing.
I think it could have had a future, but I don't know what it would have looked like exactly.
Yeah. It's a shame, but I also understand it. And I hate that. Because I love this show.
Right.
This show is so good.
It is. It really is.
Go watch The Tick if you haven't watched it yet. And if you haven't, I'm glad you just like listening to us. But go watch it. It's good. It's all on YouTube.
There you go. All on YouTube.
And like HD, like upscale too. Like I started the last few episodes we recorded when we did this season. I just stopped watching my rips from the DVD because the YouTube ones were better quality than the actual DVD of the show.
That's funny.
Now, is that a completion on the first 2 commentary tracks of season 1 of The Tick?
I'm calling it.
Cool. Well, there aren't commentary tracks for all the episodes. There's only like 4 or 5 total commentary tracks, but we may revisit it. I hope so because I can't express enough how much I love The Tick. It was such a good show for us to start with.
Well, I picked these 2. If we come back to it, I'll let you pick the next ones.
All right, that sounds good. Maybe we can get one of these people on the show now that we know that they know of us. That still blows my mind. I forgot all about that, but I was going back through our Instagram posts and was like, holy shit, I forgot that 3 of the main people involved in the show retweeted us at certain points.
It's the little things.
It's wonderful. Now, Austin, we have talked for a while, as we always do, recording these. But if the people just cannot get enough of us just straight in their ears, do you have any suggestions for what they can do until they wait till our next one? Or do you want to go to Hyperfixation Corner? I don't have anything over there in that weird corner, but if you do, we can go.
I've been staying very busy with work. Beyond that, though, I guess my hyperfixation...
Oh, we're going to Hyperfixation Corner. Wait, let me run over there. Okay, I'm there, and the old man's not there. So, okay, continue.
My hyperfixation has been also what you can do in your free time, is watch TV shows that happen to feature Walton Goggins.
Now, I know the name, but for people that don't know what he's been in, can you give some examples?
Well, I would suggest you watch what I've been watching, which is Vice Principals, Righteous Gemstones, and The White Lotus.
I've heard great things about White Lotus, like unbelievable things about it. I might have to watch it.
He's in the 3rd season. It's good. I've been watching it. I'm about to start the 3rd season, actually.
Anything else?
Oh, that's really been about it lately.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been busy.
I have been busy. Well, actually, no, since we last recorded, I went to Chicago, and I saw The Refused on their farewell tour with my friend Katie, and that was great.
Ooh.
And definitely, if you're able, get a little vacation in. It makes a difference.
That was one of mine, too. Yeah, I was literally going crazy. Like, the stress of life was really getting to me. Like, I had a pretty nasty unload session with my therapist. But, as I said, I went to Iceland, too, and it was exactly the reset my brain needed. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
The only thing I can say is I wish it was longer. I wish I didn't have to come back to normal life.
The thing I really wanted to stress with the travel part of my suggestions is that I think a lot of people get intimidated when they think of travel or doing big trips like that, even if it is like to Chicago, like a couple states over. But travel can be so easy. Like, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. Like, pick a place, you know, you don't have to spend $1 million, get a cheap Airbnb or hotel and just go. Like, you don't have to do anything other than drive around, look at the city, experience new smells, sights, sounds. Like, it's so good for you. Like, in so many subtle ways.
Did you stay in an Airbnb?
We did. I mean, I can go into some details. Like, I think especially international travel, people can become very overwhelmed thinking about it or planning. But this was my second time to Iceland. And part of the reason for that wasn't like a humble brag, but it's because it is a very easy country to travel to and can be quite affordable. Because, you know, you think traveling to Europe and you spend thousands of dollars, and you certainly can in Iceland, but our plane tickets were $400 round trip. And direct flights with included carry-on and personal item. They used to include the, you know, checked bag, but that's still great. Most places make you pay for the carry-on now. So we did that. And we even saw some tickets, depending on the date, like down to like $360, $370, which is cheaper than flying most places in the States. And then our Airbnb was only like 200 and some bucks for the whole week, as was our rental car. So like, I mean, that's not a little amount of money, but
yeah, that's kind of crazy.
It is crazy. It's such an easy country to travel to, and there's such wonderful people. And it's wild because it's one of the craziest places I've ever seen on earth. It's a wild place. So if you've ever wanted to travel internationally and you don't have the money, maybe look into Iceland. This is not going to be the last time I go for a lot of those reasons. I mean, it's very expensive to be there. The food is crazy expensive. The gas is crazy expensive. But, you know, you can still budget that. They have groceries like anyone else. Like, you can get some cheap food, you know. And the first time I went, we didn't do any experiences. Like, we didn't pay for any trips out anywhere. We just got in the car and drove around and saw beautiful landscapes and waterfalls. And that was all free. Like, it's amazing. So travel. It's so good for you in so many ways. I had a couple other things too. I've been reading a bunch. I haven't watched like almost any TV recently, but I've been reading a bunch. And I know we mentioned in a past episode that most of my reading up until this point has been sci-fi. So I've been trying to read more like self-help and nonfiction. And two books I read recently that's really changed the way I look at my day-to-day and how I interact with technology and just like my life are Your Happiness Was Hacked. That's such a good book. Go read it. I got it for like less than $10 on eBay, including shipping. And it just is from some, you know, tech entrepreneurs who have like decades of experience in the industry, and how modern technology literally steals your happiness and your time and your productivity and your sense of self-worth. And I think a lot of us know that on a surface level. Like, we think that, like most people I think know that, but like hearing it and seeing in detail how it's done and how you can like fight back and regain your happiness in life in a world filled with technology trying to steal your eyes it was wonderful. Highly suggest that book. It's not very long either. The other one is in a similar vein. It was called The 12 Mono Steps, and it's about doing one thing at a time well instead of multitasking, which is something I need, especially with my ADHD. Like, that was another eye-opening thing that, like, you know, the book wasn't revolutionary and like changing my, you know, it didn't say anything crazy, but it really got me thinking about how often I multitask and how that is negatively impacting each of those tasks, and how it can bring, you know, a sense of control and productivity and, you know, whatever to your life if you really just do one thing at a time, like at all times, and is so good. The last thing, I didn't have a long sack soup seasoning or drink, so I guess I had to fill it in somewhere with a long story. But when I was coming back from Iceland, I was trying to find a movie to watch on the plane, and I was like, you know, let me find like a documentary or something about Iceland where I was just at and, you know, learn something new too about the country. But I didn't find anything. But on Netflix, there was a movie I remember seeing coming out, but I never watched it. It was written by and stars Will Ferrell. It's called Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. And holy shit, have you watched this movie?
Yes.
It's so good. It's so good. Like, it got such shitty reviews, and I can kind of see why, but it goes back to like the tick problem where it's like, I'm not quite sure if it was a comedy. Like, and I think a lot of people expected it to just be joke, but it's so heartfelt, and it is very campy and over the top. I mean, that's what Eurovision is. I'm not like a Eurovision nut. I only know like it exists and it's wild. But the music was great. It was like a European, oh shit, what was that movie about Barnum and Bailey? The Greatest Showman. It was kind of like a European Greatest Showman vibe, but which also is a good movie that got shitty reviews that I very much enjoy. But man, it's a good movie. I loved it. What did you think of it?
I remember liking it. It's been several years since I've seen it.
Go watch it again if you like want a good movie just to like lay down on the couch before you fall asleep too, and like don't think of it as a comedy. And it's wonderful. You can tell Will Ferrell really put his heart and soul into it. And then having Pierce Brosnan play Will Ferrell's father in Iceland is a wild thing to see on screen. It is a good movie. That was the end of my suggestions. I was a lot, but I've been doing a lot, and I want other people to find joy and some peace and calm and fun in this very stressful, shitty world we find ourselves in at the moment.
Of course.
Now, is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk about what we're doing next?
Nope.
So we mentioned it in our Rovio, but can you give an overview of what our plan is for this next semi-season? We haven't talked about the details in too depth yet between ourselves, but I'm very excited for what we have planned next.
It's 3 episodes, which is the season in a whole of this particular show. And our goal is to do 1 episode for each with a different guest for each.
Yep, we're going to figure out how to do guest episodes, and I'm so excited to bring other people into this wild world we have created for ourselves.
And we're going to figure out how to talk about in one episode.
That's the part that seems the most impossible to me, Austin.
Yeah, same.
How do people do it?
I don't know.
Like, The Greatest Generation does Star Trek, and those are like full 44-minute episodes. Like, and they do 1 episode per episode every time.
I don't know.
Those neurotypicals, probably. They don't have our neuroticisms about these details.
Right.
Or bringing horniness into podcasting, or old men in cabinets. What's some of the other lore we've created? Me being a vampire.
Right. Vampire daddy.
I'm a vampire daddy who's always dying for some reason. You gotta keep life weird. It's my life motto. Keep life weird always.
KLWA.
Keep life weird always. KLWA. Yep.
Sounds like a radio station.
Welcome to KLWA. Tonight on our station, we have Led Zeppelin performing with Madonna.
What?
Yep.
I don't think that's happening.
It is on KLWA.
Well, shit. Tune in.
Tune in late night. Words in ears, tongues a-flicking, articulations of flying. Bones are rattling, pants are coming off, water everywhere. We're all wet and squirting because we're both scared and excited at all times.
Just like Arthur.
Just like Arthur, that's what the A stands for.
I thought it stood for whatever you said it stood for.
Only on daytime
Always.
Programming.
I thought it stood for always.
It does during the daytime.
Keep life weird, Arthur.
But not on KLWA late night drive home. We've got our own version of Delilah. His name's Sven, and he mostly is just trying to learn how relationships work instead of fixing other people's.
Gotcha.
It's all right. With that, I think we can end it. What do you think, Austin?
I think it's time.
I hope everyone enjoyed. Stay safe out there. Find something fun. Enjoy yourselves. Like I said, I wasn't kidding. Like, I know things are stressful right now. So anything you can do to, spend time with people, organize, just find some happiness and peace from time to time is so important. And that's kind of, I think, become kind of our goal for this show, even with each other. Man, I'm still rambling. We need to end this. I'm sorry. Oh, shit. I got some shout outs real quick, because we've been talking with a bunch of podcasts. So let me rapid fire this. Let me go back to my notes. I don't want to forget this. Shout outs. So we've been talking a lot with Myth Takes Happen, which is a podcast met on Blue Sky. Met all these on Blue Sky. Very cool show where they do world designing for people who want to write or do, like D&D or Pathfinder. They create worlds in each season and they discuss different things they've brought to it, but they never write any stories for them, which is a fascinating concept. Very cool guys. They're based out of Australia. The other one is junglemotion.tv. They're currently YouTube only as a podcast, but super well produced. They're kind of like the anti-us, where it's two video producers who decided to make a podcast, and they seem very funny and nice people. And the other one you listened to, we got a shout out from them on one of their episodes, was Dude Food, which is two buddies who test out different fast food. But thank you for the shout out, Dude Food. That's very cool. They offered to maybe do some guest episodes between us, and I think that might be fun.
Definitely.
All right, and with that, thank you for listening, and go take a bath. You deserve it. Bye.
Bye.
Just do a whole episode like that.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.